Welcome to the Quest Culture Podcast, your place for all things fantasy, sci-fi, drama, action, a little bit of pop culture here and there. And today we have our first guests from our first episode, the one and only Mr. Roy Schwartz here with us. Welcome, Roy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome back.
We also have, of course, your favorite podcasters, your favorite Quest Culture crew. Dana Deet doing her best Smallville impersonation right here with the red jacket.
That's right.
Except the S should be on the jacket, right, for Smallville? Like didn't he have it on a jacket?
We don't judge. This is a safe space for geekdom.
No, you look great.
And still,
you look fantastic. You have the glasses, you have the jacket, you're great.
Right. Yes. Well done, Clark. And then, of course, we can't be here without the professor, my cousin Sheldon Applewhite.
Hi, guys. How are you today?
How you doing? Oh, we're
good.
How you doing?
I'm not doing cosplay, but no shirt for me. Unfortunately, right. I started to wear the Shazam hat, but I thought it wouldn't be on message, so I decided against
I was left to be off message with my derivative.
Shazam and Superman have a history.
Yes, they do. We said that in the elevator.
Yes, we did. So, Roy, it's good to have you on here.
Great to be back.
We're going to jump right into it because we got a lot to cover. We want to go back to, we didn't get a really chance to really get deep into your book. So one of the things we wanted to hop on real fast and right away is your book.
So for the people at home who are tuning in for the first time or do not remember the original episode, what book would that be, Brandon?
That would be Is Superman Circumcised by Mr. Roy Schwartz.
Roy Schwartz, yeah.
Hashtag shameless self-promotion. Yes.
So real quick, I just wanted to get into why you felt it was necessary to write this book.
That is a good question, isn't it? Always intelligent questions here. I like that.
Yes, we do.
A very, very early proto version of this book was my grad school thesis at NYU. Also, I titled it as Superman Circumcised because I like titles that make you kind of take a second look. But it was very academic. It was the concept of heroism and the heroic figure in the Jewish tradition compared to the Christian tradition, particularly through Europe and the different philosophy, blah, 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 blah. But then in 2013 or whatever it was, I ran into somebody at New York Comic Con in a booth of a publisher called McFarlane, which does a lot of, it's the largest academic, non-university affiliated publisher in the States. They put out like a book a day, and we started talking, and I mentioned this. I go, oh, I saw it in the papers. Somebody wrote about it. I said, yeah, it was in a couple of papers. Long story short, they pitched me on the book. Not the other way around, which is very lucky, you know.
Let me ask you a question. What year did you finish the thesis?
So the thesis was finished in 2012.
Okay.
I talked about it in 2013.
Okay.
But you must be wondering why the book did not come out until 2021. And I'm glad you asked. I'll tell you. I started research. And I thought, you know what, people have written about the subject broadly. I don't know what I have to contribute. I know that I've had new thoughts. I knew that I noticed things that people didn't before. I knew that I had a knowledge of Jewish history, Jewish culture, and Jewish theology that other writers that came more from the comic book perspective didn't. I could say something new, but it's such a niche topic. What really could I contribute? And I told the publisher, maybe a 50,000 word kind of easy read. And then I started researching. And
it is hardly a 50,000 word easy read.
I mean, fun read, hopefully.
It is a fun read, but it's highly detailed. It's highly historical. I just think the work that you've done as a researcher is quality work. It's a dissertation like level.
Thank you. That comes to the professor, so that means something. Thank you. Thank you.
It is. Like, I mean, like,
how do you take
a literal professor, by the way, in case you didn't know.
So how do you take that to here?
So I started doing research, and I started finding more and more and more and more stuff. And I had to, at some point, stop and do what's called lateral research to make sure nobody else has written about it, because I couldn't believe nobody ever noticed these things. It was just mind-boggling. And a little bit of luck, because any success is half luck, right? And then I got a fellowship from the New York Public Library based on my research. And I was a fellow for 2 years. I got 2 years in a row, the fellowship. And the research took me 6 years. That's how much research I did. And by the time I was done, my first draft for this thing was 196,000 words, which is about 600 pages, which is not what this is.
Yes.
And then I had to trim everything. But just the endnotes and bibliography here are 41 pages.
Yes.
So it's, I wrote it to be fun to read, so it's not boring and heavy, but it's a history book for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Why?
And your training is your background, like when you were at NYU.
Right. Into the interdisciplinary masters, definitely not in saying interdisciplinary, in humanities and social thought. My focus was English literature, 19th century British through mid-century American.
Okay. All right.
So comic books fit perfectly. And
Yes.
So kind of a non sequitur, but associated with what you were saying, Michelle. Why do you think when you did that lateral research that you didn't find a lot of people who had done some of this work before?
It's funny. I say it's like an archaeologist, and somebody found like the apex of a pyramid peeking out of the sand and said there's a pyramid here, but then they just moved on.
Yeah.
Nobody excavated it. Nobody looked inside.
Pieces of it, right? Like little pieces, right? In sectors.
And listen, I want to give credit where credit is due. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes, absolutely.
We have Danny Fingeroth's Disguised as Clark Kent, Jews in American Comics.
Yes.
We have Ari Kaplan's From Krakow to Krypton. We have Simca Weinstein, who has a even better title than mine, Up and Oive. Great one. And they've all written, but what separates my book is, first of all, they've all written from the comic book perspective.
Yes.
I look at the history. I look at the culture. I look at the religion. I talk to rabbis. I talk to historians. I really looked at it and it's a history of comics using Superman as your main character from the Jewish cultural perspective.
Yes.
So that's one. It just goes much, much deeper. Number two, I argue with some of their comments. Number two is that every single one of these works ends at World War II, at the golden age of comics, as if that's where. But the thing is that the Jewish signifiers and the Jewish themes not only don't stop there, they actually pick up from that point.
Yes.
The formative years are the 30s and 40s, but there's so much more. And I can give you examples. So I really went all the way till right before the book came out.
Because you talk about the movie that came out. You talk about Superman and
all the
Batman.
movies,
right. Like all those current Superman movies is in the book.
Yeah. Everything up to 2021 is in the book. All the comics, all the movies, all the TV shows. That's another thing I did. I consumed every single Superman thing ever produced, ever. Period. Every TV show, every radio episode, every movie, every comic book, every tie-in, everything.
Goodness gracious.
And how instrumental?
It was a dirty job, but somebody had to do it.
How instrumental was NYPL? Because I've heard of this fellowship program.
Mm-hmm.
You were at Fifth Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
How instrumental was NYPL and their archives in that process? Because I actually worked at the library when I was a kid as a page, and a lot of people don't use it. It's a research library. So how much did you actually use?
That's another great question. Such a great question. The New York Public Library is a powerhouse of resources to help you in research. They can find things you cannot. They can open doors you cannot.
Yeah.
They have access to materials you will never have.
Yes.
Two quick examples. One, I had the pleasure of reading an original copy of Seduction of the Innocent, the book written in 1954 by Dr. Frederick Wortham, basically blamed all of juvenile delinquency on comic books.
Yes.
Be careful, your kids are reading comics.
Yes.
They're going to stab people in the park, kind of thing. And people believed it. It caused mass hysteria. It almost decimated the comic book industry.
For the code, right? That's where the code was developed.
Right. Now you can find all kinds of copies, but they had the original copies with original marketing. It was fascinating. They have things on microfiche. I read every article about Superman in mainstream American press. You can't find that online. You can't.
Yes.
And I read all the, I found, did kids really tie a towel to their necks and jump out their window thinking they're Superman, or is that an urban legend?
Yes.
Turns out it's not an urban legend. It happened, and I found the newspaper clippings, but you can't find that online. I tried.
Well, in New York City, they jump. I mean, I did that when I growing up in.
They were for the garage.
Maryland, but like not out of the window, but like out of small things.
Kids did. But here's the thing: they all survived, not well, but they all survived. There are other instances of kids performing either suicide or murder because they're inspired by a comic, but that's a different conversation. In my favorite example of NYPL and all, complete props, there was a quote from Hitler that I use in the book. It's sort of a famous quote that the Jews are undoubtedly a race, but they're definitely not human. Right. And it's in the forward, it's in the preface of Mouse, the graphic novel. It's in a bunch of books. I wanted the prime. Where is this from? And I couldn't find it to save my life, and ended up that the head of the Dorot Jewish Research Division at the New York Public Library reached out to a colleague at the Public Library in Berlin who started doing research, and we ended up finding it in the archive of the Munich police from a speech that Hitler gave in 1932 at the town, in Munich, at like the town Circus Corona, whatever it's called. And there was like a police spy basically there writing down what he said. And that's where that quote is from.
Wow.
And from what we can tell, nobody has ever found a prime until now.
Wow.
And that's like a big deal in history.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's just one example. There's a bunch more. So the New York Public Library was amazing.
Yeah. Great. That's awesome. That's awesome.
What is your favorite historical thing that you found about Superman that you put in the book? Like, what is it, something that made you say, wow?
Good questions, all of them. Two things. I'll give you two things. One is Jerry Siegel, the writer, the co-creator of Superman, wrote a memoir in 1978. Never got published, got lost. And it was only found in 2011 by Larry Ty when he was researching his fantastic book, Superman, the High-Flying History of America's Favorite Hero. Greatest hero, favorite hero. And he donated that manuscript to the Columbia Library Special Collections. And I went there and I scanned the whole thing. And that is a treasure. That is a historical treasure. And the amazing thing is that between he and I, nobody ever read it. Nobody ever wrote about it. Nobody ever did anything with it. It's like, how are you not?
I saw in your book that it was unpublished, and I wondered why it went unpublished.
It was
because
lost.
he died, or okay.
No, he died in 1996.
Yeah.
But one of the things he does there is that he absolutely confirms, his Jewish influences, for example, that he was influenced by the Golem of Prague
Yes.
in creating an indestructible, indefatigable champion of the oppressed, that he was inspired by Samson,
Yes.
who was a biblical superhero with super strength who fought in the name of truth and justice.
Yes.
He was a judge. And a million other fascinating things. But I'll give you an example. Something, sometimes you catch something. It's like a magic eye thing. You see it and you're looking around like, nobody else sees this? How come nobody else sees this?
Right.
In 1961, in Superman 100, I'm going to have to send you the visual so you can put it on screen later on because I'm blanking on the issue number. I'm going to say Superman 161. I may be off. In it, it's an imaginary story, which was very popular back in the day. They kind of ran out of ideas. So what if Superman was this? What if Lex Luthor married Martha Kent? Really weird ideas. Does Superman prefer his women blonde or brunette?
Yeah.
Find out inside.
Lois Lane
Weird
is
stuff.
black. I saw that.
Oh, that's in the 70s. I read about that in the book. That's a whole different thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And she lectures Superman like, you may be an alien, but you don't know what it is to be black.
Yes.
Anyway, amazing. I mean, they meant well, but it was so clunky. But in this issue, it's an imaginary story. Lex Luthor uses his scientific acumen to outsmart Superman, and he kills him. He murders him, finally succeeds in murdering him. Now, at that point in the comics, Supergirl was a secret. She wasn't publicly known. Superman used her as like a secret agent, right? So Supergirl and Luthor murders Superman and then goes underground. He runs away and he hides. Supergirl, in a disguise, goes on a covert op to find Luthor. And then she finds him and she grabs him and she brings him to stand trial to face justice. But she doesn't bring him to Metropolis or the US or even the UN. She brings him to Kandor, the lost city of Kryptonian that just so happens to number 6 million Kryptonians. Right? There, he's put in a bulletproof case, something you wouldn't think he would need on Kandor for any reason, but that's where he's like standing there with a guard on each side. And he's told, you murdered a Kryptonian, therefore you shall be tried by Kryptonians, and that trial is broadcast on TVs all across the earth, and it's called the Trial of the Century. And just in case all this goes over your head, at some point Luthor is even referred to as the worst criminal since Adolf Eichmann.
Yeah.
And this issue was written and published at the height of the Eichmann trial.
Wow.
And I show in my book, and we can find the page, or you can put the images on screen later, that they actually copied photos from the trial for panels. They actually one-to-one look the same.
Yeah.
This is the trial of Adolf Eichmann.
Yes.
In Superman comics.
Yeah.
Nobody caught on.
Yeah.
Nobody caught on. And when you see it, you can't not see it. Yeah. And there's 100 other examples in the book of these things.
Yeah, you make this connection with like Houdini like, and how that lore was like sort of incorporated in the Superman character. Somehow you think that like the two creators must have, they were around when Houdini was at his heights, and so they must have like
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. What you talked about in the book about like their reference to Houdini and how they use it in the Superman lore.
So it's a very nice segue to something none of you know I'm going to bring up.
Okay.
Anyway, Houdini was like a proto superhero. He's one of the sort of roots of the superhero idea. Houdini was very buff. I don't know if you know, he was like an early bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And he's a guy who didn't only escape from things, but he, metamorphosized from things. He went from, Ehrlich Weiss, the son of a rabbi, to Harry Houdini, the world's greatest celebrity at the time.
Right.
He went from this scrawny little kid to this buff guy. He was a supernatural crime fighter. I don't know if you know, but he debunked mediums at the height of spiritualism. Yeah. That was his thing. He was attributed many superpowers, many supernatural abilities, and police actually consulted him on all kinds of things. And that idea did not really come to me originally. I got it from Michael Chabon's The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, which is a great Pulitzer-winning book, where he sort of hypothesized Houdini as a proto-idea. And I remember reading that and yes, and then I just looked into it and actually found more threads in history. Yes. That's more fiction. But the cool segue about that is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay is being turned into an opera. And it's going to be the season opener at the Met at Lincoln Center beginning in September. Interesting, right? Yes. Hopefully it'll be great. I know the composer Mason Bates. I am trusting him that it's going to be great. The Met is part of their programming around this. They're going to do a whole slate of programming around the opera, Cavalier and Clay. And the two people running this programming is Dr. Miriam Mora, former academic director of the Center for Jewish History, and me.
Wow. Wait. Okay.
We're going to do training for the cast about the historical context of what they're doing.
Yes.
We're going to be giving lectures. We're going to be doing panels. And my documentary, my new documentary, The Jewish Comics Experience, is going to be screening twice at the Met, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be okay to say, but it's not public knowledge yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll be sure to remember that in the reels.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel just swell, Brandon.
I should have known. Because I'm wearing this shirt, I got to ask a question. How do you feel about, because you do kind of tackle it in the first chapter where you talk about Samson and Gilgamesh and such, right? How do you feel about derivative Superman? Like Captain Marvel, like Ultraman,
right?
Like Homelander.
Well,
like the Sentry.
We have to. Well, but we have to separate these things, right?
Yes, that's why I'm putting them out there.
Homelander is a spoof. Homelander is a criticism. Homelander is taking an archetype that Superman created, and then criticizing that and criticize society through that. Society creates its symbols. I would say the American president, doesn't matter what you guys think about him or not, is both a symptom of our society and a cause of our society.
Agreed.
And that's how it works. And the same with our figures, with our heroic figures like Superman and Homelander. Sentry was never meant to be a real figure. It was always, if you know the history, it was always a gimmick, and it just sort of failed upwards into becoming a regular character. I do not care for him, but that's beside the point. Then you have characters like Shazam that really started out as a ripoff and got sued successfully for being a ripoff. DC never won the lawsuit, but they ran the company Fawcett into the ground. But he's sort of evolved into his own thing over time, kind of. Does he have legs without Superman? I'd argue no, but he has his own charm and that kind of stuff. I have my beef with the movie, but we're going to get there later. The second one. Maybe we'll get there later. Yeah, but
to talk about it.
The second one.
Horrible.
So it really depends. But here's the thing. If you ask Carl Gustav Jung, right? They have Jungian archetypes. There's a collective unconscious by which he meant human beings think in similar patterns throughout history. We like to think we're super original, but we still think we have two arms, we have two legs, and ultimately we think in some patterns that overlap. It's inevitable that we're going to come up with the same ideas.
Yes.
So I talk about in the book. You could say that Superman is based on Moses. You could say that Superman is based on Jesus. You could say that Jesus is based on Moses. Or you could go Jungian and say all of them are based on the same Jungian archetype, on the same
Yes.
primordial archetype of the father god. The father figure, the god figure, the heroic, it's all the same.
Yes.
And Freud talks about that a little bit, and I talk about that in the book. And Brandon mentioned Gilgamesh. The very first story that we know of ever told, the very first written story you know of, the Epic of Gilgamesh, is a superhero story. It's about a guy with super strength and super speed who goes on an epic adventure. He even meets an adversary with similar super speed, and they fight until they realize they actually like each other, and then they team up and they go fight the real bad guys.
Yeah.
That's the superhero cliche and the very first story ever told by humanity, at least as old as 3200 BCE.
So rather
That's
than
old.
seeing it as like a derivative, it's universal. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Depends on the character.
Okay.
Depends on the character.
Okay.
Ultraman is sort of a spoof. Homelander is a spoof. Shazam is a ripoff.
Right.
And the fact they kept him around and changed him a bit, it's still a ripoff.
Yeah.
Why do you not like Sentry so much?
I don't think there's a lot of substance there. I think he's still a gimmick. I think he's still a two-dimensional character. I, believe it or not, as of this taping, have not seen the movie yet. So it may be that they did more with it. But in the comics, he just feels contrived.
I don't know if we'll talk after you see it.
Yes,
It
I've been
may-
busy. I
It
apologize.
may not change your mind, but I
Okay. I've been busy. I'm sorry.
We'll talk. No, listen. You're ruling the world right now. I love it. So, but my question is, okay, so fine. What about like Fzad, Supergirl, that sort of thing?
Okay. So Fzad is, I mean, obviously it's an homage, but that's the difference. You can have a spoof. You can
Fzad
have a,
is Superman from.
Oh my gosh, how did you know I didn't know?
Earth 2.
I was just going to ask. You must have felt it.
I felt it. I felt it coming from your
he
from your
felt a
jacket.
disturbance in the force.
The warmth was coming my way. I was like, wait a minute. I can sense it. I'm magic.
That's right.
I'm magic.
He's farce sensitive. Please explain.
Farce sensitive. Yes. May the farce be with you.
Yeah, please explain.
Oh yeah, so he is Superman. So in DC Universe, they have a multiverse, right? I think
Right.
DC was the first to introduce that
Yeah,
concept, right?
you told me.
Well, science had it.
Right.
And
But DC
the DC Comics popularized it before it became popular in science fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But quantum physics allows for a multiverse.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, on different Earths, there are sometimes different Supermen. Fzad is a Superman from Earth 2,
Okay.
23.
23, from Earth 23.
You said 2, and it's 23.
But I thought there is a
There are
Superman.
two- correct.
There is a
Different
Superman.
one. That's
Yeah.
The original Fzad, now there's two, I don't know. There's 23 loosely based on
Which one?
the original Fzad.
Obama?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barack Obama.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you
True story.
look at images of him, he looks like Barack Obama.
Yeah, the writer who
That's
created him,
cool.
Grant Morrison, they acknowledged this in interviews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but Fzad is a Superman from Earth 23. He's not the son of Jor-El. He's a son of generals of Zod, right?
Yeah, and Zod in that reality, very much like the TV show Krypton from Sci-Fi,
Yeah.
is black.
Yes. Yeah. So that's Superman is black. So how do you feel about Fzad? And
So that's an interesting thing because obviously he doesn't stand on his own as a character. He is a Superman derivative, but he is Superman, just a different Superman. But he is meant to be both an homage and sort of
Critique.
almost like a commentary. Yeah, critique would be necessarily negative in context. This is more, we can have this too, and it would mean something a bit different.
Yeah.
And let's be honest. If we had two babies from a different planet arriving in America in the Midwest,
Yeah.
one looks like a white hunk and one looks like a black eye, the reaction would be different. It just would.
they would definitely have
Even if the
different
kids
backgrounds.
take him in, first of all, the kids can say, he's there, that would be very weird. But aside from the joke of it, the reaction of society would be different. That's just the fact of it. So that right there is commentary.
Yes.
And if Superman represents America, that's a valuable commentary.
And would you say, like, even throughout
We'll get back to Supergirl.
the iterations of Superman, I think the different writers sort of had their own commentary about like how they wanted Superman to be projected. Like when we talked about Captain America, for example, and the different iterations of Captain America, right? Like they are like, depending on the writer, they kind of look different, even though it's supposed to be the same person. Would you say the same thing with Superman? Like
100%.
Yeah.
One of the great misconceptions about Superman because he's so iconic, is that he is monolithic, that he's always the same and that he's never changed, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
Superman has
over time.
always changed with the times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supergirl.
Supergirl. A character that's also grown into her own. She has had versions that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the first season of Supergirl, the show. I enjoyed certain runs in the comic.
CW? Was it CW?
Yeah, see that.
Yeah.
You enjoyed the first season.
Yeah.
It was pretty good, right?
But not after.
Season, but
Not
then
after,
afterwards,
yeah.
You know why? Because it became a soapbox. Because the metaphor stepped forward ahead of the plot, and I just felt lectured at the whole time.
Yes.
And I don't particularly enjoy that.
Yeah.
The first season was fun, and fun is not a dirty word in superhero entertainment.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be.
True.
Supergirl, again, the comic book has had good runs, bad runs. I thought the Peter David run, which was really wacky and very religious, by the way. God is mentioned in every single issue of a 96 issue run.
Smokes.
That's when she was the protoplasm and she melded with Linda Lee, and then turned out she was an angel of the Lord, and then she had an affair with a dude that turned out to be a horse.
I don't know
It was
any of
really
this.
weird stuff. Yeah. And there was a kid named Wally that was actually Yahweh with a baseball bat. And, the affair with the horse was really
That was
What's happening?
she had a romance with a superhero named Comet who had hooves, and then turns out he has actually a horse. Really, really trippy stuff.
Okay.
Look it up. Look it up.
What years were these?
This was in the 90s. It's really
90s,
weird stuff.
okay.
But you could tell Peter David was tripping balls, and two,
drugs, yeah.
I don't actually think that he was doing drugs. I just think he was really having fun with it.
Sorry, I don't mean to malign your character by saying that you used drugs in the 90s while you wrote Supergirl, but
It's like Steve Ditko, who played an unappreciated but significant role in the rise of psychedelic art and never did any drugs.
yeah, wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
But Supergirl still never, to me, rose above a derivative character that actually dilutes the original concept.
You know where I felt that the most and this is as a kid, was the Helen Slater movie.
Yeah.
And I thought she was, I like Elephant. I mean, I love The Legend of Billie Jean. I love that corny movie. And and she was,
I never
You
saw
liked it.
movie.
You
It's
liked
from
it.
1984.
I liked her.
I never
You liked
watched
her.
it.
but the movie was just, first of all, the movie wasn't great. So I'll say that. But also, it always felt like it was aspiring to be the Christopher Reeve movie and could never quite get there.
Okay.
And I think that's a combination of, first of all, it being Christopher Reeve. But also,
Was he like an executive producer on it?
No, but he made a cameo in the form of a dorm room poster.
Okay.
And you did have Mark,
That's how he shows his support.
right. You did have Mark McClure reprise his role as Jimmy Olsen, although he looked too old by 1984, making Supergirl technically the first universe-spanning
crossover.
long before the Marvel ones, technically.
Okay.
But it was bad.
Yeah.
She wasn't bad.
She wasn't bad. She was great. But it was just, I think it's hard to do.
And Jewish.
And yes. Correct.
Okay.
So, that goes to a conversation I think we were having before about, and the reason why I'm asking is I got a real hard time with derivative characters. So I just wanted to ask you to see if it was just me. Because I look at characters like we were talking about Ironheart. I like
You
Sentry.
love Century. You said
I like-
that was one of your favorite characters.
Can I finish? I like Sentry
Yes.
because
She's a fact checker.
Don't mess with this.
Keep him honest. I love it.
I'm always, listen, I like Sentry, but I like the part I like about Sentry is the mental health portion of Sentry. I feel like it addresses, and I don't want to say too much because you haven't seen the movie,
I haven't seen it.
but
He's cuckoo Superman.
I like the fact that I do like when they kind of twist a Superman thing on his head and kind of make him not so much an anti-hero, but more so just a troubled human. I do like that Marvel does that in general. Like they try to give their characters human flaws, right? Yeah. So I like the idea of giving Superman a human flaw like that, a Superman-like character. I'm not a huge fan of the character design of the Sentry, but I like the concept of the Sentry. But I do understand, because I did collect the Sentry comics, the ones that came out recently. And you can only go so far with it.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like you're eventually that you're copying Superman. Yeah. But I
it's
do feel
unavoidable. You cannot watch and say, "Oh, okay, this is these guys against a Superman pastiche."
Yeah. Right. And when I was a kid, I loved Shazam. But I still feel like I like the show and I like the comics.
Do you like
but
the show?
it's. I mean, the show is. He's a Superman fan. He's not gonna like the show. The show. It is literally Superman, except they drove around in a Winnebago.
Yeah, they did.
It's weird.
Which is weird. And he never flew like more than 6 feet off the ground, which was
Right.
funny.
But I loved
So
it. I'm
weird.
sorry.
I did love it too.
I love
It's weird how he flew.
It's weird, but I do like the character design of Captain Marvel. I like the way his costume looks.
Yeah, I love it.
I think he's interesting.
JC Beck. Yeah.
I like to watch the interactions
Flashes.
between him and Superman.
Quiz, hotshots. What does Shazam stand for?
I
The
should know
powers
that.
of Solomon, Hercules,
Wait, what of each, please?
The
wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules.
The
What is A? Is
is it? It's
Athena?
not agility. It's not agility.
The agility of Apollo, the speed of Apollo,
Aquaman.
There's
Beautiful.
Atlas.
At,
Stamina of Atlas.
stamina of
Zeus.
Atlas.
Zeus is what?
Zeus is the Z, so the power of the strength of Zeus,
Zeus.
Might of Zeus, yeah.
the might of Zeus.
Another A. Atlas.
We said Atlas.
Atlas.
I don't remember if Atlas is the second or first, but
And then Mercury, the speed of Mercury.
Is that
Might of
it?
Mercury.
Speed of
So I
Mercury,
just want to point out, it's 5 Greek gods and 1 old Jewish dude.
Okay. Which one is the old dude?
Solomon.
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 Who was actually a
Yes.
historical figure. He
Which is
existed.
one of my favorite characters from the Bible.
The wisdom
right?
of Solomon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he has his own crazy stuff. That's a whole different. It's in the book. Buy the book.
Speaking
Sold
of,
everywhere.
speaking
Fine
of the
books.
Bible, and there's something that aggravated me a little bit about some of these Superman movies, particularly like the Superman Returns.
You talk about this in the book too.
Yeah, where they
Christ-like-
the Christ
Yeah.
like thing. So
Which I think that stuff is cool, and I didn't notice that's what it was until I read.
immediately when
Interesting.
he did that,
Seriously,
I was like,
I did
No,
not
wait, look,
think about
this is
it.
a guy with a PhD who didn't notice it because he was so engrossed in the movie.
Yeah.
But that's what you want. It's interesting you didn't notice
Even
it.
the light.
To me, it slapped me in the face.
Think about
it hit me right in the face. I was
Even
like,
the light
he's
behind
falling
him.
back like this with
I
his
see it
arms.
after I read your book. I'm like,
Even-
okay, yeah, completely. Yeah.
even his
Brandon's
legs
going to put the images. I'm going to send it to him if he doesn't have them. He's going to put them on the screen.
movie
for
that
when-
much though, so maybe that's what it was. Like,
it was just okay.
yeah, I didn't like the movie.
Superman
that
is an absentee father.
Even Superman and Batman, like the way you analyze it, I'm like, I gotta give both of these movies another look because I really did not care for them,
yeah.
and you gave them real consideration.
It doesn't mean I necessarily like them. But yes.
But made me think about things in another way about them.
Oh, thank you. I think I described Batman v Superman as cacophonous. I think that was
That's one word. he used.
Listen, I do have a question, and the question I have is a little academic, right?
You're the professor. It's what you're here for.
Is not
It's like
why
the
I'm
18.
here,
There's,
guys.
there's
It's not the
Murdoch,
only
there's
reason.
Face, there's
I
BA.
I
You're the
have
professor.
other
Yeah.
talents, guys. Okay, no, but seriously, my students are reading an article from a book, "How Jews Became White." Are you familiar with it?
And with a lot of that history as well.
Yeah, because it's in your book, which I think is amazing and incredible. And first of all, your book is a history book. I love it. I love American history. So it's like what you talk about in terms of before World War II, you talk about the whole history of like Nazi Germany and how it comes about. I really love that. And a lot of times when I'm dealing with my students, they don't have a lot. They're a little ahistorical. They don't, whatever. So
It's the weakest subject in
Yes.
American education,
yes,
period.
Yes.
No
And
question.
I think American history is so vital, but I really enjoy it as a story, right? Because it's complicated. But one of the things, like, and so I wrote this down, Superman's his origin is rooted in the Jewish immigrant experience, right? And coded resistance. So what do you make of the fact that his images were eventually co-opted into a symbol of American whiteness?
Right.
And where does that leave space for like other like types of heroes, like black superheroes or immigrants like today?
They gave us Fzad.
I will let the expert answer, please.
I was joking.
Valsad counts. It's a reclamation in a way, right?
Yeah.
Shannon's right. Listen, my grandma wasn't a slave in a camp because based on whether or not she laid phylacteries and went to synagogue. It's based on her race.
Yes.
But in America, we understand race almost exclusively in terms of skin shades. But that's a very modern, very American
Right.
conception. Historically, race and ethnicity have a much more, wider spectrum. And Jews sort of fry circus for people who don't understand it because it's both a peoplehood. Going back to before peoplehood meant what it means in today's terms, we're talking about millennia-old peoplehood. It's a self-described peoplehood for almost 4,000 years, right? And it's an ethnicity and it's in a culture. and it's a religion.
Yes.
And it's all those things. And people have a hard time,
And I'm glad you're clarifying that.
you have Asian Jews and black Jews, and you just don't see them on TV because they always shows you the Eastern European sharp feature Jews because that's the only stereotype they can find, But Zoe Kravitz, who played Catwoman in New Batman, she's 100% Jewish.
She's Jewish.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Lenny Kravitz and
Lenny Kravitz is and like Lisa Bonet, right?
Sammy Davis Jr. converted. He still counts.
And New Yorkers would know that, just about the
New Yorkers would know that, but not
Jewish connection and
listen,
the black Jewish connection.
Jews are 2.4% of the American population.
Yes.
We're 1/5 of 1% of the world population. Most people in the world have never met a Jew. They just know what they see on TV.
Really? Well, I live in New York, which is one of the highest
But
concentrations.
think about it.
Right, yeah.
Most people have not. So they know what they see on TV and in movies, and it's the same type of Jew.
Yeah.
It's always like a stereotypical burlesque, cheap, easy, it's low-hanging fruit,
Right.
It's always neurotic and Seinfeld, Woody Allen, that kind of Ben Stellery, all that kind of, but that's not the only type, right? So yes, it's also a race. And by the way, even from the religious perspective, if you read the Bible, first, it's the Hebrews, which are a peoplehood. The sons of Abraham are called the Hebrews. That's a peoplehood. Then they go to Egypt, blah, blah, blah. But then Isaac and then Jacob. Jacob changes his name to Israel, and then they become the Israelites. That's when the Hebrews become the Israelites. Yes. They are still a peoplehood. They go to Egypt. They're enslaved as a people. They're exterminated. When the Pharaoh says throw all the firstborns into the river, blah, blah, as a people. Nothing with religion.
Yes.
They do not become a religion until Mount Sinai, long after Egypt, 2/3 of the way into the Bible, when they receive the Ten Commandments and the Torah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Even from the religious perspective, the peoplehood gets a religion only later in the game.
Yes.
Chapter 3 out of 4. Yes. And then they go to the Promised Land, Canaan, and they rename it Judea and Samaria.
Yes.
And most of them settle in the area that's called Judea, from where we get the name Jews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is the order of things. First a peoplehood, then a culture, and then a religion.
Yes.
And because of that, if you're born Christian, but you say, I'm a Buddhist, then you're a Buddhist.
Right.
If you're born a Muslim, you say, I renounce it. I become a Christian, then you're a Christian. You get baptized, you're done.
Yes.
In Judaism, if you say, I no longer believe, you're born to a Jewish mother who's born to a Jewish mother, you say, I don't believe this anymore, I'm becoming a Buddhist. Somebody will say, yeah, that's nice. Are you coming for Seder?
Yes, right. Yes.
It's a different concept.
Yes.
So that's a very long intro to your answer, but hopefully somebody learned something new from this.
Yes.
And
I think it's important.
Connected to that with the religion and going back to that, what I was saying about that Superman Returns movie, I was annoyed by it only because I felt like it was preachy.
Also, the point about the resistance piece, right? Like,
I want to get back to that.
Right, yeah. And I think that's important because, like, even a history that you talk about where, like, the Marx Brothers and, the Three Stooges and them being a tool to resist, Nazism in the United States and in Germany. Like, I thought, and the creators kind of using those things as fuel to write Superman. Yeah. So I think that all that is so important to
Siegel acknowledged that the rise of Nazism, he's not just an American who happens to know that Nazism is rising in Europe. He's an American who's Jewish, who has family in Europe, who he hears less and less from until he never hears from them again.
Yes.
He knows what's going on. He talks about it in his memoir. He talks in a BBC interview about the Nazism and the persecution, the rise of anti-Semitism here. That was what inspired him. And Superman was what's called in psychology a reaction formation. Like, you say I'm this and that, I'll show you.
Yeah, I'll show you.
You know, it's like the skinny kid who goes to the gym and becomes a bodybuilder. And so, it's that.
Yes.
And today, I understand that for some people, Superman is super white man, right? Even that square lantern jaw comes from racial theory. Fine. But that was the point. There was no identity politics in 1938.
It was a duality. There was a double consciousness of who they saw themselves.
You wanted to be all-American.
Yes.
And all-American meant white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant.
Yes.
It meant you put on a fedora,
yes.
You comb your hair over, you wear a boxy suit, and you become an American. You come from the boat, you come from Krypton with the Hebraic name Kal-El, with your cultural, colorful habit or whatever, your dashiki that's red and yellow and blue. You get rid of it.
But don't you
put
think
it under a suit. You come here over, you get this name that basically you might as well call yourself white bread, right? You're Clark Kent. Only a Jew would come up with a name like that for himself, right?
Right, but don't you find it frustrating that people don't know that history? That they actually use, like, that he was born from this, like, history of resistance, history of immigration, and that people...
An assimilation,
an assimilation, right? And that they become a historical where they use him as a symbol of American, like, pride and nationalism, but forget his, like, the roots of his origins, right? Which is very much a part of the story and a part of the lore, right? Like, being the only Kryptonian. He is an immigrant to this country,
he's
right?
a refugee.
Like, yes, he's a refugee, yes. Raised by, in a foreign land. Like, how people forget that and don't make the association.
And hopefully now a few more people watching this will know, and maybe they'll tell their friends, and that's how we, there was something in 1940 called the Kindertransport, where parents who could not bribe enough to get out of whatever Nazi-occupied land was could do whatever they could to send their kids away. Sometimes they hid their kids in coffins. Sometimes they put them in trunks. Sometimes they bribed, but they had enough for the kid. And they sent the kids away. Sometimes there's stories of kids leaving on ships from ports as the Nazis were raiding the port, And most of them arrived in England, some of them to the States, some from England to the States. And they arrived in with letters of, always hold in your heart the pride of your great heritage, live as one of them. That's Superman.
Yeah.
He's a Kindertransport. And it's a story of Moses because history repeats itself. Put in an ark, sent adrift to save his life, raised by people on his own. It all comes back full circle.
That story resonates. That story resonates for me as a first generation American. It really does. Like, his story resonates with me. People born from resistance and, like, trying to make opportunity out of, like, very small, resources.
And Superman fought Nazis in the comics long before America did.
Yes.
And comic books were created because Jews who were creatives, writers, artists, entrepreneurs couldn't find a job. In the Depression and the fact that it was perfectly okay to say no Jews allowed or have quotas, they created comic books. Is like, wait, I'll get back to you. I won't forget, I promise. I want to answer his question fully. Please, it's such a good question.
Sorry, guys.
And, so Superman is, think of it, what's the metaphor here? I'm Jewish, or I'm any immigrant. It doesn't matter. It's a metaphor, right? And I come with this beautiful ethnic garb, my talis, my mother gave me, that kind of traditional garb, and I have these powers of my culture. And these powers come from my culture. They come from my heritage. But in America, that's the only place under America's yellow sun and embracing, all American values that raised me. That's where I can fulfill my potential. Otherwise, I'll die. Over there, my powers are nothing. I come to the shining city upon a hill. I come to America. I get these heartland American values, and I come to the big American city where everybody's welcome. And that's where I can become super. Yeah. But at the same time, I have to hide my true ethnicity under but I can decide at any moment, do I assimilate or do I declare myself?
Yes.
Do I become Kryptonian or am I still an Earther? Mm-hmm. And that's an amazing metaphor.
Yes.
And you think of the Superman, if he had landed and the Kents didn't find him and nobody found him, or somebody found him and handled it, he wouldn't have become Superman. It's that embrace and that love that he found from this heartland American couple, and the fact they raise him with American values. Superman is a promise to immigrants that here they can make it, that here they will be valued, that here they will be embraced and fulfill their potential. And he's a powerful reminder to Americans, which we need today as much as ever, that being an immigrant is all American.
That's right.
That's who we are.
Immigrants.
And honestly, like, even when you think about, like, how he embraced, like, the values of the Kent family, right? Whereas you think about Brightburn, right? That kid was raised in a very similar way, and just, like, he wouldn't hold on to, like, what his parents tried to instill in him.
His nurture was
that was Zack Snyder, right?
Yeah.
Zack Snyder was Brightburn?
Nope. James Gunn.
James Gunn did
Brightburn? I didn't even know that.
I knew it was,
I didn't know that either.
Yes,
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Now back to you.
So now I have multiple questions. So how do you feel about because I know they changed this, and I think maybe they're going back to it. I actually don't know if they're going back to it for the movie. Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Is that what it's going to be? Or is it going to be Truth, Justice, and whatever else? Like, is James Gunn going to go back to the flag waving days, or what are we doing? Or can't you say? You can say, you can't say.
So this is tricky. Because even though it went under the radar, this podcast broke the news before anybody else, any gossip website, any pop culture website, any podcast.
Only
you
here.
guys broke the news. Brandon maybe will run the clip. That crypto was in the movie.
Yes.
This was like months ago.
Yes.
Dana asked me, I didn't even know the rumor was out. I knew it was in the movie, but I worked, if you guys don't know, I worked on the marketing campaign for the movie. I got a story walkthrough, I got production designs. I knew some of the scenes. The 5 minute they released, I knew exactly what's going to happen, all that kind of stuff in the fortress. There are things in that trailer that people haven't caught on to yet, and we can discuss them. And I can break that news here because it's in the trailer, just nobody's caught on to yet.
Okay. Oh.
Then I'm
Easter
tasking
eggs.
you.
Easter eggs.
to remember that. But it's out there, so I can talk about it, just nobody noticed. Anyway.
We'll come back to you.
It's a Schuster Easter egg. We'll get back to that. I will say that this movie is patriotic and embraces the American side. I cannot talk about what's in it, True Such an American Way, because I don't know. I just don't know. I did not care for truth, justice, all that stuff from Superman Returns. Cop out. Originally, it wasn't Truth, Just the American Way. It was just Truth and Justice. It's the radio series that added the American Way. They took it back out in 1945, and then the George Reeves Series 52 brought it back in, and it stuck.
Okay.
I like Truth, Just an American Way. It does not mean America and only America.
Yeah.
It means pluralism and cooperation and humanity as a micro.
It's kind of similar to Captain America, as you were stating the other time about what he represents.
Right. But I'm
In
also
the period of
comfortable with
1952, we're not in an isolationist kind of way, right?
Well, there really was like the American, democratic, capitalistic in a positive sense, Western versus the Eastern Bloc. That was really that.
Yeah.
It was really nationalistic, jingoistic. But over time, it really has come to just mean American values, which are universal values. We just managed to codify them in a national way before anybody else in any kind of modern way. But it's absolutely that. But I'm also comfortable with truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Because what is hope if not that tomorrow can be better than today?
Yeah.
That we can evolve and achieve and do better.
I have two quick questions, and we want to talk about the movie real quick.
Yes.
Because I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah.
So, as you're talking about, this is his name, Kal-El, you're talking about some of the biblical influences
I just
to the
realized
creation
about
of
the rapping
creation
of
of the character.
Superman.
What is the so
Right?
you're, so you're
We'll put an eye bulb over your head. And
Yes.
you're saying that there are these connections to the Bible,
Yes.
right, in its creation.
question.
But you're saying he's not a stand-in for some kind of transcendent being.
No. If you look at
Because the filmmakers keep trying to make him one.
But no. The filmmakers trying to make him Jesus.
Right,
Right.
but you are
Jesus
clear in the
is
book that
Christian.
it's Moses. You are
Moses.
very clear in the book.
Well, I give
Moses
Jesus his
is
own
still-
chapter, and then I
Yes.
give another chapter comparing the two, making the argument that he's much more Moses.
Yes.
Last time I checked, Jesus didn't punch Pontius Pilate through the walls of Jerusalem, knock them down. The short answer is he's not supposed to be a deity any more than Samson is supposed to be a deity, any more than Moses. These are all reluctant hero servants. They'll serve their people, sacrifice their people. They're all human. They're all faulty. They're reluctant at first.
Have to be convinced.
Yeah.
Yes.
The hologram of Jor-El and Superman, the movie, is analogous to the burning bush. It's the same role. And if you look, and I do it in the book, if you look at the burning bush monologue, and then you look at the one for the movie, it's almost verbatim. They took that, then they took some of the transfiguration of Jesus, you're my only son, and they meshed them together, and it's exactly that.
Yeah.
No, it's almost verbatim. You see it, you can't not see it. Come on.
That Marlon Brando.
It's cadence even, So, and El means God in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yes.
What, 2 Jews that went to Hebrew school, went to synagogue, and were not secular by today's standards, and Siegel's mother was very active. What, they named their character God and they don't realize it? Come on.
Yeah.
And that was there from day one.
Yeah.
But it's really with the years that Jesus was added, and I do trace exactly how that got built up, and it's fine. I'm not saying it's less legitimate, but that's when Superman became sanctified and Jesus but then you're writing yourself into a corner.
Yes.
Because he is faulty and he's not a saint,
Right.
and he's not Jesus. And Superman Returns a great example because he's not even moral.
Yeah.
He runs away
suffers
without
from
saying
hubris.
goodbye because he's afraid.
Right. He suffers from hubris.
So unsupernatural.
Yes.
He's cowardly. He has hubris. Which is of course the biggest sin, right? And then when he finds out he has a kid, he was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll be around." Look, he was not a moral character.
Yes.
That's what he needs to be before anything else. Aside from the fact the movie was kind of morbid and a little bit boring.
Yeah.
I found that, and before we get to the movie, this is the last question that
We want to get back to the Superman movie.
Yes.
Yes.
I did find some, I mean, I was looking for hope, right? I found some hope in the chapter you were writing when you were discussing essentially how the comic books, how they started coming up with the character, when they started coming up with the character, more importantly, right about the time where the country wasn't doing well and people were jobless and, you know, there was a retrenchment a little bit and America was kind of pulling back from the world, kind of analogous to what seems to be happening right now, I feel. But I found hope in the fact that it was in moments like that, in times like that, that these creators created something so monumental and inspirational, like Superman. Right?
I did.
So I'm hoping that
Yeah.
maybe during this time, there will be more creations and people will be inspired to create more. And the reason why I'm even bringing that up is actually transitioning to the third question, which was that article about creators being intimidated by fans right now.
By Albert Fzad, it's in Comics
Yes.
Beat. If you look it up, creators are being
I
silent.
wanted to see if you could comment on that.
It's a wonderful article.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other subject. If we have time to, I'm happy to go into, but I want to stay on Superman if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
But yes, toxic fandom is not nice. And if you claim to like superhero comics, but you're mean to people, then you miss the point of superhero comics. You're not a fan.
That's right.
Okay. That's really the gist of it. But yeah, Superman is a symbol of our highest, best, toughest, kindest selves. Towards the end of the book, I say, this is a guy who has omnipotent power. Doesn't matter what version, generally, right? He can be anything. He can do anything.
Right.
And he chooses to be kind.
Right.
In a genre teeming with hundreds of characters that are faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, that can leap tall buildings single bound, one thing that Superman still does better than anybody else is inspire hope.
Right.
That we can be better tomorrow than we are today.
Right.
They can achieve our potential. That we can look up in the sky and see ourselves.
Yes.
And that's what I love about him.
What do we miss in the trailer?
You ready for this?
Yes.
It's a scoop, but I feel that I can say without the sniper from Warner Brothers. I signed an NDA bigger than my book. It's not even funny. And I signed more than one, actually.
That's hilarious.
I signed two, yeah.
Yes.
My day job is at a law firm, and I couldn't show the actual NDA because I had information in it, but I told them about and people are like, holy crap, that's intense.
Yes.
They're not joking. So there's a lot of things I'm dying to talk about, which maybe we can talk about after the movie comes out. But one of the things that are in the trailer, and it's on the trailer, it's in the 5-minute scene they released, which maybe the opening scene, I forget if that is or isn't.
Crypto.
Yeah.
When he's landing in the snow and he's injured.
You
And then
gonna
he's being,
say who kicked his ass? Because I really didn't.
I do know, and I'm not going to say. And I don't remember if it's the opening scene of the movie or not. I think it may, but anyway.
In the beginning,
It's early on, yeah. So he gets dragged to the fortress. And if you notice, the fortress is different. So in the Christopher Reeve, it's definitely the Crystal Fortress.
Yes.
And they give it a new twist, which I love, which is it's underground. It comes up to meet him, and it moves around to always be facing the sun. And there's like a sunbathing bed, like a special machine. That's all a Gunn edition, and I loved it and knew about it and all that stuff. My prediction is going to be folded into the comics because it's a good idea and it's worth keeping. But the original Christopher Reeve fortress, the original fortress in the comics was just like a high-tech, cave thing. Nothing special. Then Christopher Reeve fortress, which Ellsworth, the guy who got an Oscar for production design, he wanted to look like the inside of a crystal. Jeffrey Ellsworth, British guy. He got an Oscar for it, and rightly so. It looks like the inside of a crystal. It's the 70s. People were into crystals, right?
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it really feels alien. You don't understand how it works. Okay, you put this crystal here, but how do you open the door and what happens? Like, you don't understand how it works, but that's cool because it's alien. Here, they kind of combined it. You have the crystals, but there's also really, computer consoles, and there's metal, and there's stuff. If you look at that bit again, and maybe Brandon can put on screen a couple of, like a GIF or a clip or an image, you look at the technology, and it's retrofuturistic. It's designed to look like 1930s Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon style futuristic technology, and that's a nod to how Joe Shuster originally designed Kryptonian technology.
Like when he was writing back.
I mean, he took it from the Buck Rogers and all that stuff,
Yes.
but he definitely embraced that kind of
Future.
well, back then it was just futuristic.
Yeah.
Although it had some visual elements taken from that we're getting into the weeds here, but they designed this Fortress of Solitude with Chris Reeve movie elements, but also retrofuturism that goes back to the Joe Shuster designs, and nobody's written about it yet.
Wow.
Nobody's picked up on it yet.
Wow. So we'll have to look at the hardware when we
Cool.
look at it
Right?
again. You're gonna have to pull that up. For
Is that a cool addition for this thing?
That
I
is.
think so. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go back and look at these stills.
And a reference, right? You're
How do you-
an expert on Superman.
How do you
Love
feel
it.
about the costume?
Don't like it.
I don't like it either.
Why?
Oh wow!
The best design costume so far was the Man of Steel 2013 Art Nouveau inspired costume. It looked beautiful. My issues with was well, it was way too dark.
Yeah.
It was barely blue. It's not necessary.
Yes.
Think, and the cape touched the ground all the time, got
Yeah,
dirty,
the mesh.
pissed me off.
Dark. Yes.
Just like eat Superman. Cut the cape. Keep it clean.
pissed you off.
Keep it clean. Like he's in the desert there, and it's like in the dirt. What's going? Anyway, but it was a beautiful design. I
Met
thought.
ball.
I
So
love
you
the
like
symbol.
that Man of Steel design. Interesting.
Yes, except for the color palette.
Except for the color pattern.
This is Superman.
But
he's
he's
an
like,
alien.
oh, you
I
don't mind
will
he's
buy
all-
that his costume is bright. It should be bright. The new one is bright. I like that it's
You don't mind
bright.
that he's all like jacked up looking in it? Like he looks like he's.
It's looking like a
Nonetheless.
Fantastic Four art to me. Like what they're doing with the
Well, this one looks like a union suit.
it
it has
like it.
supposedly has no padding. I don't buy it. I think the shoulder has padding, but that's beside the point. It's very much inspired by the new 52 suit, except the new 52 suit looked like a hard shell.
You didn't like that
I hated it.
Yeah.
I make fun of it in the
It doesn't look
It
that way
had
to
like
me
the-
though, but I
it
do
had
like
the
Mandarin
military
collar.
collar.
well, this one has a collar, just
Mandarin
less
collar.
pronounced.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't all the lines and the what's called piping and tubing, those kind of rays, and
Yeah.
it's too fussy.
What about
I like the trunks. I think they look a little bit too much like a diaper. You just an inch off, just an inch off.
dumpy?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that made Christopher Reeve perfect, and people don't even realize, he just had a very tall midsection, and he could pull it off better than anybody else.
Yeah.
One of the many things that made him just born for the role.
Yeah.
But I do like David Cornswet, and I don't know if Brandon, you know the story, but I predicted that he would make a good Superman back
did.
in 2011.
Remind us what else
You
he's in.
Yeah.
11 or 12,
What
yeah.
made you say
Remind us
that?
what else he's
You saw
in.
a play, right? With him, or was it?
He was in a TV show. He was a teen then, right? He was in a TV show called, was it The Candidate? I want to say The Candidate. It was a TV show produced by Gwyneth Paltrow about a guy who's more or less psychotic, who already in high school is preparing his career to become the American president, to run for president, and he was
I saw she
secretly
was in the
gay.
show, right? She was in the show. It was on Netflix.
She was in the show. It was on Netflix. You're
I saw
right.
it.
I saw the pilot, and that's
I
it.
saw it, yeah.
And this kid is gay, but he keeps it a secret. But he's in love with the quarterback, who I think may have been dead. And he imagined, I don't remember the story.
Yeah.
Maybe the quarterback was gay, killed him. I don't remember, but that was played by David Cornswet. And when he showed up on screen, I said, he looks like Superman. He looks like a Superboy. But honestly, that's a dime a dozen in Hollywood. But we saw the episode, but he can act. And here's the thing, he has a warmth to him, and he has a casualness to him. He would make a good Superman when he grows up.
You said that to
that's so funny.
Brendan.
I told Brendan the story. I told this to my wife in 2011 or 2012, whenever the pilot aired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
Double
were-
Superman was on your mind too. So yeah.
Well, always. But I called it. I've seen
Yeah.
many actors who look like
yes.
but I called it.
Who can fit?
People
Yeah.
were being so negative about his looks. I think he looks
Why?
fine. I don't know.
I haven't seen him enough,
think
but I remember that show. I don't
don't-
remember what he
I
looks
don't
like
care.
from the show,
I
but I
just want him
remember
to
the
be
show, and I
a
remember
good
that character.
Superman.
Yeah.
You
Brandon
know,
gotta
will
go
give
back.
us a still.
gonna go back
throw it
and
in.
look at it.
I agree. I want him to be a good Superman.
Want to be
I'm not a huge
Superman.
fan of the costume either, but I trust James Gunn. I trust that he's intentional about what he's doing. And I feel like, and this could be a stretch, I feel like he's going to change his suit. I feel like there's going to be another suit in that movie.
I can neither confirm nor deny these allegations.
You confirmed without confirming.
Oh my God. So now I'm super
Wait a
excited.
minute, he's gonna get in trouble. So
Just
No,
be
no,
quiet.
yeah.
No more.
I'll
NDA is-
I'll take the camera.
I like the color palette. I like the S back on the cape. I like the boots, actually. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited for it. I'm excited
excited.
for it. I think it's.
After this, I may get disinvited from the premiere, but yeah.
Oh, God.
No, you
Oh,
won't.
God.
I hope it's everything we need. I hope it's full of hope. Like I want to see Superman movie where I walk out and I'm like, yeah. Yeah, like we need that. You know, like I want to walk out with a breath of fresh air. I want people to walk out feeling hopeful and happy and inspired. And I haven't seen a Superman movie like that since the original. And I'm wanting so badly to get that. And I hope that's what it is.
You look like you were getting ready to say something.
I just want to say, what separates an action hero, and half of them have effectively superpowers anyway, right?
Yeah.
What separates an action hero from a superhero? And I would argue, and this is truest to Superman more than any other character, a superhero entertains you, and that's great, but they also need to inspire you. It's morality plays. It's about choices, power and responsibility, right? You need to walk out of the theater being inspired to be a better you.
Yeah.
And I really hope this movie delivers. And from what I've seen so far, I'm optimistic.
So you have the same hopes that Brendan has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one last question because we're out of time. Thank you again for doing this. Like we never, ever, ever have enough time with you. And it's so cool to just have you here.
Thank you for having me.
What's the one thing that you hope people get out of this book?
Two quick things. First of all, the book is Superman Circumcised, the complete Jewish history of the world's greatest hero, is sold everywhere books are sold. If your local bookstore or Amazon happens to not have a copy, they'll order it. It's easy to get. I hope that they will get a newfound appreciation for the history. Look at that. Look at that. All right.
Read the book. It is chock full of like pop culture and history. I love it. I really do. I mean, you know, I like the first time we got it, I was sort of reading parts of it, but like you can pour into this thing because it is history.
And it's an easy read.
And it's a good narrative.
Next textbook in class. Actually, that book is being taught together with my documentary at the University of Cleveland beginning next semester.
Oh, very cool.
I will say, follow me on social media at Real Roy Schwartz on all platforms.
Yes.
None of those fake Roy Schwartzes.
Yes.
There's like 4 different Roy Schwartzes who are writers.
Really?
None of them are you.
Only one. But Real Roy Schwartz, there's some exciting news coming up. There's exciting news about Comic-Con coming up really soon that I'm dying to share. Yeah. There's exciting news about the Superman movie that I may be able to share before the movie comes out. There's a lot of stuff coming on. So
yes, I'm loving that.
Wait, so when are you going to be you're going to be in Cleveland?
I'm going to be in Cleveland. I'm going to be at
You're going to be in Cleveland because I'm from there.
I'm going to be in Cleveland at least twice. One time in July.
Okay.
And one time next summer, and I cannot yet tell you why. But both times are heavily related to Superman and will be in the news.
Isn't the Superman museum there?
Goodness.
It is.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Very
will
cool.
be going home.
There's no Superman museum officially
yet. Roy, thank you for
Get
coming.
the book, guys.
Thank you very much for being here with us. We always enjoy having you. You gotta let people know where you can find you.
Sheldon Applewhite on IG, or
that's the professor.
Applewhite at Blue Sky.
Yes.
Yeah.
How are you asking me?
I mean, I don't use it often enough, but yeah. And of course, on Quest Culture, you can find us.
Of course.
Yes.
the best pop culture podcast out there.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Dana D.
Oh, Dana D on IG.
All right. And I'm Brendan Hamilton. You can find me at Brendan Hamilton or Be Music Maker on social media. Thanks you guys for tuning in. This has been a lot of fun. I'm sorry we ran out of time, but we will have Roy back. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following. Thank you to all new listeners and new followers. We really appreciate you making this really fun. It's been a lot of fun. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.